Welcome to this episode of the Legal Paige podcast. Today's episode, I am joined by copywriter extraordinaire, Anna Woods. Anna, you guys, is a part of the Legal Paige team and is basically the best copywriter in the business, but I am biased. And she does such an amazing job taking everything TLP does, product-wise, idea-wise, blogs, podcasts, YouTube episodes, all of our thoughts, and she writes it out in such an extraordinarily beautiful way that I would not be able to do myself. And we are going to be talking about very candidly in this episode how to utilize a copywriter in your business. And I give lots of suggestions on how we have gone about really figuring out the best way to have her as a basically full-time copywriter in our business. She does every single copy piece that we put out, from every social media post to reviewing graphics to, of course, email newsletters to all of our launch sequences to all of our post-purchase sequences. Every single email funnel you can think of TLP Anna has touched and primarily written, to blog posts, intros, and just generally looking at the copy on those and making sure that they flow smoothly and are still in TLP's voice, because we have lots of people that touch our copy and a legal team that is basically just lawyers in the business. So before Anna and I dive deep in this episode, I want to formally introduce her. Anna Woods is a wife, mama, and copywriter based out of a little farmhouse in Iowa. She spends her time wrangling backyard chickens, hanging out with her son, and writing for entrepreneurs across the country. Specifically, Anna writes for business owners who are ready to grow and scale, but don't have the time to find the right words. After becoming her own boss at 23 and running a photography business for over 8 years, Anna harnessed her lifelong love for writing, along with her degree in strategic communications, to build a thriving copywriting business. Since then, she's helped business owners sell out coaching programs, achieve 60K plus, six-figure plus launches, and book out their calendars. Without further ado, you guys, let's get into this juicy episode, Legal Pagers. You're listening to the Legal Paige podcast, where we chat about life and business with a legal twist. I'm Paige, attorney and photographer, helping online businesses and creatives tackle their business dreams without breaking out in hives. No more legal mumbo jumbo. This podcast features simple, bite-sized advice that'll have you legally legit in no time. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I am overjoyed to have my good friend Anna on the podcast. Anna has been a member of the Legal Paige team for over 3.5 years. She kind of started as a temporary, I would say, email copywriter, intermittent launch support, and copywriter. And now Anna is our official, basically full-time, I would say, copywriter and social media manager. Anna, thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me, Paige.
I know you very well, and you know me very well. Like, the intimacy that we know each other is kind of strange. I think mostly that goes one way. Like, Anna, to me, she knows everything about my life, but she has to, and we'll get into why in this episode. But first, I would just like you to tell everyone kind of who you are, what you do, why you do it. I know your path to where you're at now is a little different and unconventional. I'd love for you to share that with everyone tuning in today too.
Yeah, I feel like copywriters always have like a super intimate relationship with their clients. And you wouldn't think that, but it just is, because you have to really get to know someone to be able to write for them. So yeah, my name's Anna Woods. I am a wife and a mom and a copywriter. I live in Iowa in a farmhouse. I have like backyard chickens and a garden and the whole bit, but I write for entrepreneurs really across the country. And I write specifically usually for business owners who are really ready to grow and scale their businesses, but they don't have the time to find all the right words and do all the other things in their businesses, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs get to that point after so many years in business. So yeah, my path to now has been kind of strange. I was a photographer actually for 8 years. And I started my photography business in college while I was studying communications and copywriting. And when that took off, I set copywriting aside on the back burner and I went full force in photography. I know you can relate running a photography business in law school. Our paths are kind of similar in that way, although I was not in law school. But then over the course of running my photography business, that love for copywriting bubbled up and I started writing just here and there for different business owners in the wedding industry who kind of noticed my writing. And then when my son was born in 2019, I said goodbye to my photography business really entirely, and I just focused on copywriting from there. And it's been such a gift, honestly, because now I work with so many business owners and I'm able to help them grow their business while I can just kind of be in the background. And yeah, through that process, I've helped sell out coaching programs, do 5-6-figure launches, and book out people's calendar, all just with words.
I love it. All just with words. It's not just words. There's a lot more to it. But yeah, you guys, Anna and I met, we were actually both kind of helping with a mastermind back in 2018. She was like kind of mentoring with copywriting and back-end email funnels. And then I was mentoring in this mastermind with legal stuff and back-end on for people's businesses. And then Anna and I, so we were, I would say the help, you could call it, so to speak, of the mastermind and kind of experts that were brought on. And it was really fun because I think we connected immediately. And I really had never met Anna before. And then we stayed in a house with 20 other women. And it was just so fun because we hit it off right away. And I think our business relationship and personal relationship really evolved from there. And it took a while. I would say it was a good year of like, how can you help? And you guys, the beginning of 2018, I was still working for a federal judge and running a pretty massive, like successful photography business. I had an associate, like there was a lot going on there. And so I in that stage, Anna, we were dealing with, what am I doing with Paige Marie Photography and the Legal Pages, I guess, starting up at the end of this year when you're done working for the judge. And I guess we'll get to that. But I was so gung-ho on like being a photography educator and all this stuff. And that had been kind of my goal at that point. And then over the past year from, the rest of 2018, moving into 2019 is kind of when we shifted things a little bit. But I would say 2019 was also a little bit of a mess. And yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons learned copywriting wise. That's why I wanted you on this podcast episode, because I guess the first question I have for you is like, what more do you have to be than just a copywriter? Because especially with someone like me who you've almost worked with for 4 years, and the evolution of my business and the way that I have strategized and had failures and learned from those failures and had successes and also like streamline those successes. I think you have provided a lot of just coaching and assistance and also internalized things that I haven't been able to see because I only see things and I'm too close to my business that you can see differently as a copywriter and how then we, persuade potential customers in that respect. I guess that's my first question is, what have you learned from working with me, just generally speaking, over the past 3.5 years?
Yeah, I think copywriters are salespeople, first and foremost. That's how I think of my job. And so as a copywriter, you have to be a really good listener. You have to know what questions to ask someone to get what you want out of them, much like a lawyer, I would think. But you also have I think you have to be a really strategic thinker. And I think speaking to your point of being too close to your business and needing someone to be an outside perspective, I think that's the biggest thing I've learned maybe from working with you is when you work with someone over time who has a really successful business, you have to almost take ownership as a copywriter, as if it's your own business, and think of it with that strategic brain and that salesperson brain and adopt it as your own. And only in doing that can you really help a business thrive as a copywriter. Does that make sense? Like it has to be almost an offshoot of you, of me.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I mean, if I'm going to strategize with anyone, and we've jumped on strategy calls before where I'm like, Anna has been here the longest. Like she knows what happened in XYZ situation and how we can combat that differently this time. And honestly, even if it's not just copywriting, it all flows into the copy you produce anyway. So if you have those strategic conversations with me too, I think people just don't really, I think they just think copywriters like you press a button and you submit a contract with a copywriter and then it's just like go time. They just like write all these things for you. And that's not what happens, because if they don't know how you run your business and why you run your business, and I mean, that kind of really flows nicely into the key benefits of adding a copywriter to your business, which was my next question. Like you have to, like you said, become an arm and extension of me, and you have to learn how I would say things from the Legal Paige's perspective as Paige the owner versus I'm just a copywriter here to write, temporarily for your business. Like you can't really get entrenched in someone's business. So what are those like big key benefits for people who are not like me 4 years in, but who may have been like me at the end, 2017, 2018, where I was like, I just don't have time anymore. And for everyone listening in, like I'm a lawyer. I write for a living as well. So words are something that I have crafted and spent years in, the academic world learning how to craft, arguments with words and so on and so forth. And so for me, that was a really hard thing to let go of control wise. And I think for lots of people, it's like, I don't want to give a copywriter that isn't me control of the words of my business. But it was something that I needed to do for time's sake. But yeah, what are those big benefits, Anna, that people can really start thinking about if they're like, all these things Paige and Anna have been talking about today, like really make me want to ponder and start strategizing like how I can add a copywriter in?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, there's the obvious benefits of copy, which would be reaching your audience better, creating like a message that's tighter and more focused, having copy that actually sells, that's acting like a salesperson for you so that you don't have to constantly be doing that. Those are the obvious things that come to mind as to why people usually initially jump in with a copywriter. But I've found with a lot of my longer term clients like you, it's time. And that almost feels silly. Like it's not a big enough ideal for why to hire a copywriter. But I think that the return on your time is worth the investment 100-fold, because if you work with a copywriter long enough, they can be your voice without constantly having to talk to you. And they can they can just take over in a way that is still true to you. So it's not like it's not your voice or like you're losing control, but they've just spent so much time mastering your message that it's, again, an extension of you. And then you don't have to worry about it at all. So I would say the other huge thing that I think about is just time, saving you time.
Yeah, because I also would have to learn how to write copy that sells and converts. And that in and of itself is very challenging. I think business owners who are wearing all the hats in their business, they are doing that. And I encourage you to do that. Anna, I'm sure you do the same. Like, hey, here's really good copywriting books that you could learn from. Here's really good courses you could learn from. Here's, a really good breakout session at a conference where copywriters are really teaching those things. I think it's important for people to educate themselves on that. I do think it's important for you to learn all of that before hiring a copywriter too, because then you understand a lot about what they do and then how you two are going to work together with that strategy of the selling and converting. But if I'm going to be entirely honest here, and you guys know on the Legal Paige podcast, I'm a little bit too candid sometimes. But I think my team would totally understand this as well, because it trickles down both. It trickles down, but it also like is the step up process too, is what I'm trying to say. So Anna is basically the first person I hired she's still a contractor because she has other clients and she likes copywriting for other clients. But I'm one of her like bigger clients that she works for. She works for me a lot more than other clients. And so I have a higher package with Anna, and that has evolved over time. But Anna is basically one of my core workers on my team. And I've had her since the beginning, essentially, is what we're trying to tell you. Like the Legal Paige started in August 2018. So she was working for me even prior to that and kind of helping launch it, essentially. And then has been through the evolution of like my photography business and the Legal Paige, and like we were trying to tie those two together, but then that didn't work. And we were like, and then we just went to the Legal Paige primarily. And the time thing for me was huge. And this is how I really want to relay it to all of you. I then built my team after I had Anna on board as my copywriter. So she was my first hire, my most important hire, and I got all that time back. So then I had those hours and hours and hours of writing copy and strategizing, and all of that back end selling and converting. Strategic thinking wasn't there for me anymore. I was able to give that to somebody else. And then I could do more customer service things, product building, back end advertising and marketing, back end website and analytic, conversion strategizing. I mean, I literally could do everything else, and I did everything else until then I hired my next person, and then I hired my next person. So I would say next we hired a lot of contractors, like virtual assistants, to help with different customer servicey related things, graphic designers contracted out, website designers contracted out. I would say Morgan, who's still on the team now, is probably our next hire that stayed on the longest. And she was our podcast manager. And then she kind of grew into more, like we call her, like she's just totally jack of all trades, rainbow person on our team. She can do anything. And then I hired like a full-time operations manager and then a full-time digital marketing manager. And the reason I'm kind of leveling this up for you, and then we have a legal assistant that helps me. And then we have a legal intern that helps her. And then we have like other contractors too, like editors for the podcast and things like that. Little people that little hires out that we do temporarily. But what I want to get at here, my whole point, I know that was long-winded, was if I had to cut people, and I'm just saying in like a hypothetical world, obviously all of my employees and contractors, I love you dearly. None of this is happening. But you do have to think like that. If you are a CEO and you run a business, what is the bare minimum of people that you could have if shit hits the fan? Like in 2020, I think lots of small business owners learn that. What if all else fails and you don't have funds anymore and things happen and you have to let people go or furlough people for a certain period of time? Like, if that world scenario happened, who would be the people you would keep on? And it would be the opposite. Like I said, the trickle down, the people that I hired last would probably be the first to be let go, because the time and everything that Anna puts into my business is so important to me that I would keep her on. She would be like the last leg of the business. And then it would be just me. And then I would run it myself and do what Anna does as well. But I don't want to do that. Like it's all of the, heart things in your business where you're like, I like doing this and I don't like doing this. And then if you don't like doing this, you outsource it. That's how I feel. Like I can write copy and I can do social media, but it's just not worth it. It's not worth it for my time. So that was really long-winded, but that's how important Anna is to me. And I hope you guys understand my point here. That is how important copywriters are. So for all you copywriters listening, that's how important you are. Seriously.
Well, I think what is your business without a message, right? Like if you don't have a consistent message, that's going out on your social media and your email and your website is cohesive with copy, you don't have a business because no one's going to connect with you. So I stand by that too. I think copywriting is super important. Without it, what's your business?
And everything touches, like copy touches everything. So Anna has also learned that working for us is as she's become more and more integral in everything we do here at TLP, she touches more each and every day. So we've learned like, we can repurpose X into social media posts and we can repurpose that into the, email newsletters. And we can repurpose a lot of those from YouTube episodes and podcast episodes, and like everything goes together. So Anna's like touching a lot more, and copy has become so important to us. And it is always something I can look at and I can review, but why at this point in the game, why would I need to do it when Anna would do way better of a job? And I would say, Anna, that's something we've learned here in 2021. I think that was the pivotal change for us. Is I was still touching way too much and reviewing and kind of being the last point of the process and workflow for page review is usually the last task that is on the checkbox for certain things. And we kind of just moved those over to like, Anna just needs to review those. And I trust her. And that is a big thing that I think people need to understand with copywriters, as well as that trust and control. What would you say for people that are like looking to hire a copywriter, have reached a point in their business where they really need to, but are scared to let go of that control?
Yeah, I think that's a really common concern because oftentimes most people I write for, interestingly, are good writers. And so they feel like they can do it and they can do it. And so that last bit of control is really hard. But I would say to approach it as a long-term relationship versus a one-off project. You can hire a copywriter to write your website or write a blog post or do those one-off things. And that's great. That's a great way to start if you're kind of nervous. But if you think about whoever you hire as someone who could potentially grow with your business, it gives you kind of the time to learn how to release control and to allow them the time to master your voice and learn it so well that you feel comfortable releasing the control. Like we've worked together for over 3 years, and only in this, last year did that really happen where you felt like you could release the control. And that's okay. But when you go into having a copywriter and just thinking about it as a one-off project, it's just harder to release those reins. So that would be my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah. And I mean, this all goes back to that long-winded answer that I had too. I'm like, no wonder I would keep Anna on board because she's been with me the longest. She knows my business the best, and she knows my voice and how I run my business and my morals and ethics behind my business. And she, we've had hiccups along the way with like posts or weird responses to email newsletters. I mean, just the gambit of, okay, we made a mistake here and that's not how we want to represent TLP. Let's learn from it. Let's move forward. And every small business owner can relate to this. Like, you're going to keep your hires who are so solid, trustworthy, and know the most in your business, because then you don't have to reteach that to a new hire. Like, it's really hard to let go of that when you've already given control to them. You've already given over that control and you've put trust and faith in them. That is the hardest to build, I would say, as a small business owner with the people that work for you. But with copywriters in particular, Anna, I think when people are starting out and they really, really need a copywriter, they know they need a copywriter. Maybe they're like type A or type AA, Enneagram 3 like myself, and then they have a hard time relinquishing that control. I would just say once you can do that, you're going to feel so much better hiring a copywriter. And I want people to know that in reality, that does not happen overnight. It's not like you're just going to suddenly hire a copywriter, sign their contract, And then you're just going to have the ability to let go of that control, and they're just going to like figure it out right away. Because Anna, what is it like working for new clients and kind of setting up as their copywriter? It is an ongoing process. And from what I've seen in our industry in particular is people just hire and contract them out too much, where it's so temporary that they don't get the full benefit of a copywriter. And then oftentimes like the copywriter, like then the relationship ends, and like, do you have poor feelings against the copywriter? Does the copywriter have poor feelings against that relationship? I mean, I think that's a poor mindset going into hiring one.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's this misconception when you hire a copywriter that it's a done for you service and that you don't have to invest in the relationship. It's just one of those things where you can, like you said, sign the contract, press the button, and then that copywriter can just enter into your brain magically. And that's not the case. Yeah. It just doesn't happen that way. And yeah, I think when I'm working with a new client versus working with you, it's not a learning curve, but there's just a lot I need to learn about them. And so it's almost more of a time commitment for them, I would say, at the beginning, because I need them to fill out questionnaires. I need to have more conversations or strategy calls with them. I really need to enter into their life and their business and what their vision is and what their heart is and all these various pieces that if I don't have that, I'm kind of just pulling things out of my butt because I have to know you deeply to be able to write something that's actually convicting for people to read. So yeah, I think, and so on the flip side, when I'm working with someone that I've worked with for years, it's almost, they get to reap the fruits of the time that they put in at the beginning because they've already shared all of that with me. So I can kind of take it from there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I completely and absolutely agree with you there. I think people don't understand that they need more than just like what your business does and the surface level of your business, I would call it. Because if you want people to engage on your social media captions, if you want people to like actually click that button in email newsletters, if you actually want people to convert on a launch sequence, it is more than just what your business offers. It's like the whole brand and person behind the business as well. So for you, I feel like it's been building a weird virtual friendship where Anna knows way too much about who I am that I would never probably tell just like a regular colleague, because I think usually if you are a boss to someone or you're employing them, like there's some boundaries there that you don't necessarily want to cross. You want to be friendly with them, but not too friendly. I'm sure you guys have listened to podcasts on that before. But for Anna and I, it's just like there's no lines. There's no boundaries. She has to ask tough questions to me, especially when things are going on in the world, Anna. I think we've learned that over the course of my business as well, is political things have happened or things have happened on social media that are blowing up, or what is on tap, basically that moment in the world. And are we going to be cognizant towards it? Do I have an opinion on it? Do I want to share that opinion? I mean, those kind of deep things are things that you know that other people don't know. And so again, when you're thinking about hiring a copywriter, like you have to let your guard down a little bit, because it's not like Anna's going to go, I trust her. Like, I know she's not just going to go like voice all of that I tell her in a response on Voxer on social media, or she's going to like put it in a huge email newsletter. But she uses that back end tone and how I would want to convey myself as TLP through the words that she crafts. And that's really important, Anna. I mean, we don't necessarily need to give an example, but I was going to say, like, when the BLM movement was happening basically last May, June, and July pretty heavily. I mean, you and I were Voxering constantly back and forth. You guys, Voxer is like a walkie-talkie app where we just like send each other voice memos, and it's just a lot quicker than like doing it in DMs or on Slack. And that's how Anna and I communicate primarily. But Anna would be like, okay, you've posted this, you've done this. Like, I can tell you're really engaged and you're really on top of this. Like, what do you want from me? Like, how can I help you? Or what is the tone of the next post you want? And then Anna would also ask me, Paige, when do you want to move over to like talking about business again? Because I feel like that was a period of time when I was really having my finger on what was going on online. And I think the people that weren't thinking big picture wise on what was happening in the world and on social media ended up in worse off positions because people just thought they were only thinking about business and they weren't thinking about, the actual societal issues that clearly mattered to so many people. Yeah, I think that's a really good example of you have to trust a copywriter to be able to pivot, but also where is your stance on this and when do you want to move over to go back to talking about business? I don't know if you have anything to relay in that respect for copywriting purposes and like what you've learned from working with clients in those type of scenarios.
I've learned as a copywriter that to really like impact my clients, I need to be a consistent presence in their life, especially in times like that where anything political is happening. Like, I have to be there ready with notes, like ready to hear your heart, hear what you have to say, hear how you want to present it, and then craft a message based off of that. And so I think it goes back to one, being an extension for you of just who you are. And then two, like just this idea of a copywriter typically can't just be this one-off person in your business if you really want to have the biggest impact from having that copywriter on your team. It needs to be like this consistent relationship of just diving into the hard things, the vulnerable things, so that they can actually help you.
100%. And I mean, times like that too are really interesting for copywriters, I would say, because say you were like a temporary one-off launch sequence copywriter for a business, and you wrote this huge funnel in sequence for them to sell, and then this huge world event happened. I mean, it could be anything. The pandemic, for example. I mean, so many business owners experienced that in March 2020. It was like they had a plan in place for Q1 and Q2, and it all went out the window. And people were like launching or gearing up for like big things, right? Sales, big online courses launching. And there was just no way. Like if you had if you were on top of what was happening in the world at that time, which hopefully everyone was because they were all in lockdown, you knew that there was you really couldn't move forward the same way that you had prepared. And so then if you're hiring a temp copywriter, it's like you're going back to the drawing board, or you have to rehire them to come back hourly and like tweak all these launch sequences. But do they really even know what you're feeling? Like what is your audience feeling during that time period? So I would, for Anna, for you during that period of time too, we were talking like, Anna, what are you seeing happening in the industry, and primarily the wedding and event industry too? Anna and I have a background in it, so that's very helpful. But Anna, you were able to be like, let's not do this. I don't think that's going to go well. I feel like you just have more experience on like social media copywriting in particular, and being able to pivot quickly. I think that is a true skill set that copywriters need to have. Am I correct?
Yes. Yes. For social media, even in launches, like sometimes you need to tweak a launch sequence midway through because maybe something isn't resonating, or there's something better you could say, or there's so many things that come into play. So if you're a copywriter and you're willing to pivot and not just like stay so cemented into the message that you initially started with, you'll probably convert more.
Yeah. And if you guys are hiring a copywriter, I guess to wrap up this kind of segment of conversation, I would look into that when you're hiring their services and kind of looking through their offerings and their contract. Like, is it just a one and done thing once they send you the email newsletters or send you the launch sequence copy, or they send you the 30 captions on social media? Like, is that it? Or do you get like 2 to 3 extra hours of tweaking that they can clock thereafter, that you have, I don't know, maybe 1 to 2 months to use? I think that goes both ways. Like, copywriters maybe think about adding that in, and business owners look for that or ask if they would be willing to do that, because there are just life happenings that occur. I mean, completely rewriting things is totally different, right? Like, copywriters just need to be paid for completely rewriting things. But maybe just adding that onto your package, because there may be little tweaks that you need. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of like how people could still do it, hiring one-off copywriting tasks, because they probably do that at the beginning. I did that at the beginning. But I just think from a copywriter's perspective, reality sets in and there are going to be tweaks. It's not just always done.
Yeah. And I think it's worth noting, like, not to demonize the one-off copywriters or people who are hiring a one-off copywriter, because that's so necessary sometimes. And so I would just say,
absolutely,
if that's you and you're like hiring someone to write a website or write a launch sequence, just be open to being really vulnerable with your copywriter and be ready to do that, even if it's a one-time project, because the more you share with them and the more you're willing to answer their questions, the better your copy is going to be. And that will help you get the most out of even the one-off experience. It's when people come in and they don't want to share anything that those one-off projects don't go as well.
Love that. And yeah, I'm not trying to demonize one-off copywriters either, because let's be honest, I hired you as a one-off copywriter for the first 2 years, I would say, almost 2.5 years. So there you go. We're coming full circle here, you guys. I mean, I'm trying to get across the point that like you want to invest in the copywriter. There was probably moments where I was like, okay, do I really need Anna? Like, I'm looking at budgets, or I'm like, I would meet other copywriters at conferences and be like, they're really cool too. I don't know. I'm just being kind of honest here. Like, I could have gone and found someone else, but the investment in keeping with the same copywriter was so important to me. And I think it should be for all of you tuning in today, if you are going that route, because those one-offs, Anna got better and better and better and better. Every single time she would complete like, a start to end project kind of thing, where she really started to learn my business, really started to learn my voice, really started to learn how I would convey things and, try to sell. I sell differently than other entrepreneurs as well. And so, yeah, I just think that's super important. And I would be interested, Anna, do you know how other copywriters communicate with their clients? Is it most often through like some type of voice messaging system, because they are trying to just like figure out what that person would say and then you put it into words? Or how does it go usually? Like questionnaires? I feel like it'd be hard to do that with just like messaging back and forth or emailing back and forth.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not 100% sure. I would hope that a lot of them use like audio messaging, because it's my favorite thing on the planet. But I would assume a lot of copywriters, in my knowledge, use a questionnaire and then some sort of strategy call, like a set amount of time that they get on and talk. And then from there, I don't know if they use Voxer as much as I do, but I love it because then it can just keep the conversation going.
Yeah. And that's something else. I mean, for everyone like listening, and you have to learn how to communicate with each one of the people that you work with or contract out, because everyone's going to have a different communication style. And I think my team like has always tried to be on like one platform, and like we're always trying to get everyone on one platform, and that's all fine and dandy. And I do think it's very important, like for task management purposes, to be on one platform. But everyone on my team kind of honestly prefers a different method of communication. Some people just prefer to hop on a Zoom call, like Anna said, like a strategy call. Some people, like Anna, prefer to just Voxer back and forth. I have team members who prefer Voxer and Slack for different like projects and things we're talking about. So that's really important as well with a copywriter. Kind of feel out how do they like to communicate with their clients? Will that work for you? Or can you implement that as a business owner? Can you like work with them on their preferred means of communication? Because for Anna, it was like, okay, I don't totally love Voxer, but Anna loves Voxer. I will get on Voxer. And it has exponentially increased just the ability for us to quickly communicate back and forth, but also for us both to just realize we're not going to be on any other platform. If Anna really needs to get in contact with me, I just need to look for a Voxer notification and I know it's from her kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anna, how do we work ideas out? That is kind of a good transition here from, we do use Voxer, but if there are different things like happening, say legal wise, because I think I'm probably the only lawyer you work with. Mm-hmm. You work with probably other people in like the wedding industry, I would say. I'm not sure. I would love to hear kind of your full array of business owners that you work with, and how is it different kind of working for an expert or a professional like myself versus other business owners?
Yeah, so my client base honestly ranges. I've written for chicken farmers. I've written for coaches. I've written for photographers. Yeah, you name it. I've probably written something. But for you, when it's really like a profession that you went to law school for, like I can't make things up, right? Like I can't just post a motivational quote and tie it to something that's legal jargon heavy. I think it's different in that I have to do my research. I have to ask you really specific questions, and I have to know how to like draw upon content that you've already created to find my answers. It's a mix of all of those things. So what's great about your business is you have so much content, like so much good, helpful content, blog posts, podcasts. I mean, it's just rich with things to draw upon. So usually I can find my answer if I just look. But if it's something that I don't feel comfortable with posting, I just ask you.
Yeah. And oftentimes, you guys, if there's like some like 1, 2, 3 step process or something that Anna's like posting on social media, she'll usually do her research, write it up, do her research on like the legalpaige.com is what we're talking about, not just like Googling it. Yeah. And then she will usually present it to me before she posts, almost always, unless it's like verbatim taken from a blog. She knows it's good to go. I've already written it. My legal team has already touched it. But yeah, most often that is how we kind of work legal ideas out, I would say, for copywriting purposes, is through Voxer, and she'll send me something and then I'll tell her to, tweak this, or actually this is how it would work, in the tax world or with this contract scenario type of thing. Anna's also pretty active in our Facebook group as well. So she'll draw kind of inspiration for, I like to call it like poignant on what's on tap this week. And we draw a lot of that from our Facebook group. Like, what are they asking questions in relation to? What do they need help with? And then we can assist them with kind of writing responses, of course, in Facebook. Me and my legal team are in there answering. And then Anna's able to just go in there and turn that into a really awesome repurposed social media post or something along those lines. So yeah, I think it is a little bit different than just writing for, say, like a coach who, maybe just does basic business coaching, and all business coaching is very, very similar, I would say. I think people coach differently, and that's where the copywriter really comes in and is like, what is your take on business coaching? But it's a little different than like having a professional license and degree that Anna has to be really careful about for myself. I think a question we also always get, Anna, is the legal aspect of hiring a copywriter, because we were talking about this briefly before we press record on this podcast, but I think copywriters have different opinions about this. And I think that's important to note and important for people to understand is, legally speaking, how does it work having a copywriter? Who owns the words and phrases and graphics they create? From my perspective and my legal opinion, I think almost always 99% of the time it's a work made for hire situation. And so we are contracting out copywriters, and their words then are ours. That's hard to say together because you are crafting something particularly for our business, and it's using all of the words that I would put together. You're just writing the sentences a little bit differently and making it more salesy or converty. And that should be owned by my business and not by Anna in, her own personal respect. So usually it's an assignment of copyright for copywriters working for businesses. And copyright here that I'm talking about in a legal respect is copyright. And Anna is a copywriter, so copywriter. So those two things. Anna, what have you kind of seen or talked with about copywriters regarding copyright issues that have occurred?
Yeah. I think it's always kind of a bitter pill to swallow when you're a new copywriter and you realize like all this work you've poured into your copy, you just don't own anymore. It's just gone.
Yeah.
But at least I came to a point pretty quickly where it's like, what am I really going to do with all these words that I've written for you or for other clients? I mean, is it just going to sit on my Google Drive and I own it there? Like, we kind of have this point of reckoning where you realize, of course, these words are yours. It's your voice, it's your heart, it's your message. And I'm just kind of pulling the strings to make it happen. Yeah, I think I would guess, like you said, 99% of copywriters give away the full copyright, RIGHT. But I think there are cases where copywriters have probably been burned, where people might take their copy and create templates out of it or do something with the copy to make money off of it. And that's where the lines get blurry. I'd be curious your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced something with a legal client before where the copywriter had created something for them, and then they kind of turned themselves into a coach and then basically said that they had crafted all of that copy, like you said, turned it into a template, or they honestly coached people using the sequences or the copy that the original copywriter had created for them, and then saying like, oh, this is the way that you write copy and this is how you should do it for your business. That's kind of blurring the line a little bit. That is like their workflows and systems and back-end way of doing things versus like the words and copy related to your business. If you try to turn, the basic elements that the copywriter puts together into something that would be sellable or commercially viable to third parties, that is when it gets very sticky and you don't want to end up in that situation. So contractually speaking, Anna, I would make sure that all copywriters have that kind of disclaimer in their intellectual property clause in their contract with clients. I would say that, primarily it is a work made for hire situation. And, the copy is owned by the business that's hiring them. I will let, copywriters out there know. I know it's hard. Like Anna said, it's a large pill to swallow. It's challenging because it's all the work you've put into it, and then you're just like assigning it over. But I will say businesses want that. So just be aware of it. Be aware that they do want that ownership in the words they have, because they probably want to repurpose it into other things. Like they want to take a blog post and repurpose it into social media posts, or repurpose it into a YouTube episode, or repurpose it into a podcast. And like, that's just, you just have to let them kind of do that. But I think you can always have a disclaimer in that intellectual property of what you own, like what elements of the copy do you own that they cannot then go make for sale, commercially viable to third parties kind of thing. So that's important. As we're on this topic, Anna, because people always like learning about this from the Legal Paige podcast, what other things have you come across working for clients that you want to make sure is included in your copywriting contract that you have with them? I would say confidentiality is a big thing because this is a B2B relationship, business to business, you guys, where you can kind of put non-disparagement clauses in there, confidentiality clauses. Like Anna and I just went ham on telling you all the amount of information I divulged to her. And I want to make sure she's keeping that confidential. She's probably someone I trust the most in my entire life to not divulge things because she's only doing it for one purpose, to write copy for my business. So those are some big things. Anna, what other things have you experienced? Like probably, I don't know, people not liking copy, I would guess, like fees, that kind of thing.
I think deadlines. So if I need a questionnaire or we have to schedule a strategy call to hit a deadline for you, I need it by a certain date. And if I don't have it by a certain date, I can't promise you that I'll hit the deadline that was agreed upon. That's a big one. I believe most of my contracts, at least for one-off projects, I have like an hourly limit. And so if I exceed that, then there's like an hourly rate on top of it just to protect yourself from, I don't know, rewriting things a million times and then finding yourself in a situation where you've worked more on one project than you would have for 4. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Deadlines, fees. Yeah, like artistic, I don't know. You'll know what it's called, but just if they don't
artistic style clauses.
Yeah. Like if they don't like it, they still have to pay me for my time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very much like a photographer or a videographer type of situation. My follow-up question to that is, how do you then combat that prior to them signing a contract? Do you have like, hey, these are my clients I've written for situation? Do you have, for me, obviously, I don't care if you use my name. I'm sure you just get permission from clients and you're like, I write for this person, and then they can go look at our copy and decide if you're a good enough writer, I guess. But yeah, how do people like know your style of writing? And it's probably that coupled with strategy calls and discovery calls where they're really learning the way that you work. And then they sign off on the contract that like, you've learned enough about my business. You know how I work. You can't ask for a refund based upon you not liking it, essentially.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting because as a copywriter, I don't necessarily want to have my style. That's because I'm trying to write in different voices. And so I'll have people ask me to send a portfolio, which I'm always happy to do. But I always note that all of these businesses aren't going to sound like I would write for your business, because I don't want it to sound like, oh, Anna wrote that copy. So that's a really interesting thing. It's not like a photography portfolio where you can just send pictures and be like, yeah, your wedding will like basically look like this editing style. But yeah, typically to answer your question, I'll send a portfolio. I'll say, this is the body of work I've done. This is my process. And then you just have to trust that you'll like it.
Yeah, you do. I was going to say it all goes back to that again. I mean, that's why having copywriters on for longer periods of time is so important. They become vested workers for your business, vested individuals who know a lot about your business. And all of that in turn correlates to better copy and better selling and better converting for your business. So yeah, Anna, I guess, I just wasn't sure. I knew you beforehand, so I didn't have to like go search for a copywriter and like find one. And I'm guessing like you have portfolios for people. Just my initial like gut reaction take on that is If you guys are looking for a copywriter and they send you portfolios, look for copywriters that are well-versed in various types of small business owner copy. Because like Anna said, I think that is more influential to sell her clients on her services. Like I can write for 10 different types of entrepreneurs versus a copywriter who only writes for, say, like online coaches. I would be a little bit leery of that because I'm like, oh, that's all they do. So their copy is going to sound similar to my copy. And then how different am I really? So that's just like my gut reaction to that is if you are trying to inquire and hire a copywriter, maybe look at it that way. Look for kind of a diverse portfolio versus a similar portfolio, basically opposite of a photographer and videographer. You want kind of the full gambit of types of copy they can produce.
And I'd add, don't write off a copywriter because maybe they haven't written a piece of copy that sounds exactly like you, because that might be a good thing. So as long as, like you said, Paige, they have this diverse portfolio where you can see that they're writing in various different ways, that I'm just reflecting on what you're saying, but that's a better indication of their talent than reading 5 different portfolio pieces on online coaches that all sound the same.
Absolutely. And lastly, don't write off a copywriter if they make a mistake.
Yeah.
An ode to copywriters because I think they become better and they will never make that mistake again with copy if something goes wrong or they write something that you're like, I would never say that, or that isn't how I want my brand to be conveyed through my email newsletter or through my launch copy. I mean, you have to let them make mistakes, especially copywriters, because they can only do better from their mistakes. And they may think that is the best way to sell or to convert or to write that segment of your sales page. But in turn, maybe it's not what maybe you didn't convey that clearly in your questionnaire. And so don't just blame them for making mistakes with copy. I would say internally reflect on, okay, how could I have helped them write that copy a little bit better? And this is a good tie up, Anna, for the episode because it all goes back to we've been together for 3.5 years, almost 4. And that amount of time to get to know each other is priceless. Honestly, it would burden me so much as a business owner to try to find someone else to do what Anna does, because I know that it would take a year or 2 to build that type of copywriting relationship. Any last tips you have, Anna, for utilizing a copywriter for your business? Not necessarily hiring one, but just really using them well as a business owner.
Yeah, I would just repeat, be willing to share more than you think you need to. Go above and beyond in answering their questions. Don't just do the bare minimum because, again, I'll say it over and over again, but the more you share with your copywriter, the more they have to draw upon, the more they can write for you, the better they can write for you. And in turn, the better they'll be able to grow your business.
Yeah. And the more you share, you guys, I think the more you'll be willing to let go of some of the control in terms of how you write copy to people that are prospective clients. Anna and I have become more and more able to do things that are controversial or things that people have differing opinions on. Like we like those kind of dichotomy pieces of copy because oftentimes they do better for our business. We don't do them that often, but I don't think I would have done that, Anna, 2 or 3 years ago. Even a year ago, honestly, I would have been like, no, I'm not comfortable. We do not need to rock the boat with people. I have like a very black and white business. Like I sell contracts. That's what we do. But I think we found over time that people do care about me and my personality and who I am as a business owner and the morals and ethics of our entire team and what we do and, how we try to help business owners. And with that comes differing opinions on all of that. And so sometimes it's okay to release that control to your copywriter and for all of you copywriters maybe tuning in as well, be okay with like pushing those buttons a little bit and trying to get your clients to do things that may be a little bit more, like I said, controversial, because those usually help in reels, in social media posts, in graphics. Those are the ones that'll be shared more. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, Anna, before we wrap up here, but that I think is the biggest thing that I've learned this past year, I would say, working together.
Yeah, like the attract and repel component of copy. It can feel so uncomfortable. It really can. And I would just reiterate what you said to copywriters, like be okay with not pushing your clients' buttons, but pushing them maybe to do something that feels outside of their comfort zone. The last thing you want to do is just take direction and just as a copywriter, you obviously want to do everything to make your client happy. But sometimes that means pushing them to do something that's outside of their comfort zone because you know that it will ultimately impact their business for the better. So don't be afraid to do that. Like as a copywriter, you should, because you're the one you're in control of their message. And so you're the person that cares the most about that. And if no one is going to push them to expand their message, who is?
Yes, yes, yes. I'm over here nodding. I'm just like, this is the whole reason why you hire a copywriter to begin with. I am too close to my work. I am too close to my business. I am too close to like wanting to only say it this way versus saying it 5 other different ways, and one of them being a little more controversial. And guess what? That's probably going to be the one that does the best and then converts the best and then it gives us sales more because those people love our business. I'm just trying to reiterate here everything Anna and I are talking about. Like, it is so important. Copywriters are one of the most, I would say, underutilized business owners out there, and people that need to be on your team. And if you don't have one, you need to seriously consider it. It's not for like newer businesses, I would say. I think you need to wear that hat yourself for a while. But anyone looking to scale, I mean, that's how Anna introduced herself in this episode. Like, I help business owners kind of move to the next level and scale and grow. And you can't do that like through passive income or other revenue streams. You can't do that without the help of a copywriter. So I definitely suggest you look into one. If you guys have any further questions, of course, you can reach out to me in DMs or you can email the Legal Paige and we can kind of give you more resources on finding a good copywriter. I have lots of good friends in the industry who are copywriters, not just Anna. I don't know if I'm going to give up Anna to everybody, but I'll send you other people who are great as well. But Anna, where can people find you? I know you're totally willing to even just like answer questions from copywriters too, who may be listening to this episode, and people who are interested in finding you and learning more about you. Where would they go to do that?
Yes. My website is annaleewoods.com. And then my Instagram is the same. So feel free to email me or shoot me a DM. I'm always happy to answer questions.
And it's ANALEIGHWOODS.
Correct. Kind of
okay, everyone. We're clearly on a copywriting episode because Anna and I have been spelling things to make sure they're correct for you. Oh, that's just the perfect little tie-up bow of this podcast episode. Thank you all for listening. I will link everything we talked about in this episode, including Anna herself. Anna, thank you for being on today.
Thank you so much, Paige. This was so much fun.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Legal Paige podcast. See, I told you being legally legit isn't so scary. Be sure to visit thelegalpaige.com for all show notes. And it would be super awesome if you could head over to iTunes and leave a review. Last but not least, don't forget to join my free Facebook group for unlimited legal and biz Q&A. Chat soon, Legal Pagers.